I have a quick opening and then I'll look forward to your questions. We have heard from now a report out of committee on groceries affordability that confirms what we've been saying for a long time. There needs to be more transparency and the federal government can play a bigger role in reducing the cost of groceries. We know that greedflation, corporate greed, is driving up the cost of living. It's a significant factor and neither the Liberals or the Conservatives have had the courage to even mention it. Donc, ce qui est clair, c'est qu'il y a la inflation, le fait que l'avarice des grandes entreprises contribue à la coût de la vie qui augmente. Le comité a confirmé ça, donc on va continuer de mettre la pression sur le gouvernement de faire plus pour réduire le coût d'épicerie. Je n'ai pas vos questions.
On Paul Bernardo, can you please explain what you believe should happen? Can Minister Mendicino stay in his position given the revelations from CBC last night?
Those revelations are shocking. The fact that the minister claimed that he only recently learned about the transfer of Paul Bernardo from a maximum security to a less secure facility. The fact that he's claiming that he just found that out when CBC has now reported that the ministry knew about that for months, at least 3 months, is shocking. It's appalling. I can't imagine what the family is going through right now, the horror and the grief that they're reliving, the trauma that they're reliving. This is completely wrong. And I'm going to be asking questions directly to Mendicino about that.
Should he resign? Should he resign? Should he resign? Can you be very clear? Why should he stay in? Why is he paid $300,000 or $200,000 to not do his job?
I think this is a problem that's bigger than just a minister resigning. There's a culture in this government where multiple ministers have had serious allegations of not properly reading emails. Not just the Minister of Public Safety now, but the previous Minister of Public Safety. It's been revealed by CSIS that he was also advised of the allegations or the risk to the minister, to the member, to Mr. Chong, to the member of Parliament, Mr. Chong. So it's clear. It's clear that just asking for the removal of a minister, when this goes right to the Prime Minister, this is the Prime Minister who sets the tone here, and it's multiple ministers. So removing a minister isn't the solution. This is a government that's got to be held accountable. They've got to do something to clean up their house. They're not doing their work, and it's clear that this goes right to the Prime Minister. There's something clearly wrong. There's a clear breakdown in communication. In addition, Mr. Johnson's report pointed out that the ministry is not looking at information being provided by CSIS. There's a serious problem of communication in this Liberal government. They're not reading emails. They're not getting briefings properly. They're not actually acting on information that their ministry has, and the minister is claiming that he doesn't actually have the information. This is a serious problem. I think the buck stops with the Prime Minister. The buck stops with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister himself is the person that has set up this culture with his ministers that they're not doing their work. The Prime Minister is the one responsible, and we've got to hold the Prime Minister to account.
On aimerait vous entendre en français. Il y a M. Mendicino, il y a M. Blair, qui n'ont pas eu d'informations. Est-ce qu'ils doivent démissionner selon vous?
Je pense que c'est une question vraiment de ce Premier ministre, parce que c'est une culture dans ce gouvernement où les ministres ne lisent pas leur courriel, ne sont pas informés sur des enjeux vraiment importants et disent qu'on n'a pas lu les courriels ou on n'a pas eu l'information. Ce qui est maintenant, c'est clair, c'est fausse. Donc, il y a un problème de culture dans ce gouvernement libéral et je veux cibler le Premier ministre et le gouvernement libéral.
But what is accountability? I don't understand. If it's not resignation, if the buck stops with the Prime Minister, you say there needs to be accountability. So what do you think accountability looks like if it's not that?
We need to make sure that the Prime Minister is the one that's held to account here. The Prime Minister sets the tone of this government. Replacing ministers is not going to deal with the problem, the culture. The culture of this government is one that they're not doing their work. They're not reading emails. They're not getting briefings properly. There's a breakdown of communication. So what this government needs to do is get its act together.
Le travail que M. Leblanc a fait avec de consultation. M. Trudeau dit que ça va se conclure rapidement. Ça, on ne sait pas si c'est avant la fin de la session parlementaire. Quel contact avez-vous eu, vous, avec le bureau de M. Leblanc et avec tout autre chef de parti jusqu'à présent?
On parle de l'enquête publique? Oui. Donc, je propose un processus parce que ça ne va pas fonctionner si on a seulement une approche de chaque chef d'opposition donne leurs demandes, des noms. Comme on a vu avec le Bloc a fait la même erreur que le gouvernement. Ils ont suggéré Mme Justice Arbour, quelqu'un que je respecte énormément, mais elle a aussi des liens avec la Fondation Trudeau. C'était la même critique que le Bloc a soulevée avec M. Johnson. Donc, ils ont fait la même erreur. Donc, ce que je propose, et on a déjà eu des conversations avec Monsieur le ministre Leblanc, notre homologue, Peter Julian, a déjà commencé des conversations. On veut avoir un processus. J'ai donné un exemple de ce processus, c'est ce qui s'est passé en Ontario quand j'étais député en Ontario. Un comité avec chaque parti reconnu, un député, puis on a des candidats ou candidates et on analyse leur qualité et puis on décide ensemble. Ça, c'est un processus au lieu de faire la même erreur que le Bloc a déjà fait en nommant quelqu'un qui a la même connexion avec la Fondation Trudeau, qui était la critique du Bloc avec M. Johnson. Donc, ça n'est pas une façon d'aller de l'avant. Si le gouvernement est sérieux, il doit premièrement s'engager à avoir une enquête publique. Deuxièmement, rassembler tous les partis, les chefs de partis pour avoir un processus qui fonctionne.
Have you started talking with opposition parties about how you want to see the next phase of foreign interference play out?
Yeah, so we've laid out a process. Our concern is that what the government has done is said, every party leader, give us your thoughts on it. They're going to receive basically different letters from each leader and say, oh, there's no consensus, this can't go forward. I want to avoid the Liberals having that excuse. And so what I'm proposing is the Bloc already made a mistake. They presented a name, Justice Arbour, who's someone I respect enormously, but on a quick Google search, the first thing that shows up is that Justice Arbour has a connection with the Trudeau Foundation, which was the major critique of the Bloc for Mr. Johnston. So clearly that's not the way to move forward. What I'm suggesting is we get all the parties together and do something similar to what happens in Ontario when choosing a legislative officer, which is to have every recognized party have one member on a committee. It's chaired by a non-voting person, which is from the government, normally the speaker, and that we analyze and evaluate all the candidates. And then we ask questions to those candidates and then make a decision unanimously around the candidate and around the elements of the inquiry.
Est-ce que le Canada doit sortir de la Banque asiatique d'investissement?
En général, ce qu'on a dit que si on veut investir davantage pour bâtir d'infrastructures ou pour avancer les enjeux dans notre pays, on doit le faire dans une manière qui est financée publiquement. Et j'ai des problèmes avec l'approche du gouvernement libéral, avec la banque d'infrastructure, leur participation dans les autres organismes où ce n'est pas clairement des financements publics pour financer les projets publics.
Conservatives want Minister Mendicino to resign. Do you still have confidence in Minister Mendicino, and should he step down in light of this Paul Bernardo story?
The revelations are deeply concerning. They are. I just can't imagine how horrific they are for the families of the victims. To know that the minister is saying one thing, but it's come out that the ministry knew about this transfer for months. This is deeply concerning. My problem is that I don't think this is a problem of just one minister. This is a problem of a culture in this government, and I don't want to leave the Prime Minister off the hook on this. I don't want the Prime Minister to just say, oh, look, the minister has been changed now, problem solved. This is a problem that goes directly to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister needs to be held accountable. The Prime Minister needs to recognize that it is a clear trend in his government that multiple ministers are saying one thing that they know, and then there's information coming out that they actually ought to have known more, that they haven't read emails, that there's a breakdown in communication. It is not enough for me to just say one minister goes and somehow this deals with the accountability. That's not good enough. We need to hold the Prime Minister accountable and this government accountable.
Madame Arbour Elle a été, à ma connaissance, mentor, là, si je me rappelle bien, en 2014 de la Fondation Trudeau. Ses liens actuels avec la Fondation Trudeau sont pas tout à fait clairs, là. Donc, est-ce que si vous êtes en train de dire que la personne ne doit jamais avoir eu jamais de lien dans tout son passé avec la Fondation Trudeau, est-ce que c'est possible de trouver
Oui,
ce genre
oui,
de...
bien sûr. On a dit qu'à cause des allégations concernant la fondation, qu'un élément spécifique, on a donné 3 éléments spécifiques. Un, c'est on doit avoir un juge ou une ancienne juge. Deuxièmement, aucune connexion avec la Fondation Trudeau. Actuel ou passé, parce que c'est aussi l'apparence de partialité. C'était le même problème avec M. Johnson. La connexion avec M. Johnson aussi, et elle a dit que c'est une connexion pas très forte, mais très forte, mais c'est une connexion. Donc, dans ce cas, pour avoir un processus qui fonctionne et une enquête qui fonctionne, on ne doit pas avoir aucune apparence de partialité, donc aucune connexion avec la Fondation. Et puis, c'est complètement possible d'avoir quelqu'un comme ça, complètement.
You say you don't think the answer is to have the minister resign, but do you have confidence for him to continue in the public safety portfolio, given it's on the front line of foreign interference, given we saw the gun legislation? Do you have confidence for him to stay in this role?
Well, it's clear that he has failed on a number of fronts, and so it is very legitimate. I also raise these concerns that people are saying, it doesn't look like he's got his house in order. How can he keep our country safe? Those are legitimate questions. I just don't want to let the Prime Minister off the hook. I want to make it very clear the Prime Minister sets the tone and has multiple ministers that are not doing their job. It is the Prime Minister that should be held accountable.
Sorry, so he's failed, but he should stay in place. I don't understand how that makes sense. He's failed on multiple counts, you just said, but he should stay in place. And so if you think he should stay in place, that means you have confidence in him.
I want the Prime Minister to be held accountable for a government that's continuing to fail to do the right thing.
So does that mean the Prime Minister should resign? I don't understand what the Prime Minister being held to account means.
The Prime Minister should be held accountable for a government that is not doing its job properly on a number of files. They've failed again and again. We're going to continue to make it clear that this government has shown a number of massive failures, and it's the Prime Minister's fault for the ongoing errors that we're seeing, the lack of communication, failing to respond to really serious problems, not reading emails. This is directly at the foot of the Prime Minister who set this culture.
Should he take action, though, by shuffling his cabinet, moving some people out of these roles that you're raising concerns about?
I mean, that's a decision the Prime Minister is going to make, but I don't want to leave the pressure off the Prime Minister. I don't want it to be that, there's just one minister.
What do you want the Prime Minister to do about Mendicino?
I don't want this to be the Prime Minister gets to shuffle a minister and then somehow the Prime Minister is no longer held accountable. This is directly a critique of this Liberal government and a Prime Minister who's not doing his job. Thank you so much, Missy.